The abandoned signal captain Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the U-East Pathfinder, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace through the main view screen. The ship hummed quietly around her, carrying its crew of 200 through the void between stars. Sarah had been commanding deep space missions for 8 years, but she had never received a signal quite like the one currently puzzling her communications team. Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez looked up from her console, her dark eyes filled with concern. The young officer had joined the crew just 6 months ago, fresh from the academy on Luna, but she had already proven herself invaluable. Her talent for decoding alien languages was unmatched in the fleet. "Captain, I've cleaned up the signal." "As much as possible," Emma said, her voice carrying the weight of what she had discovered. "It's definitely a distress call, but it's unlike anything in our databases. The mathematical patterns suggest a completely unknown species." Dr. Marcus Webb, the ship's xenobiologist, leaned forward in his chair. At 52, Marcus had studied more alien life forms than anyone else in human space. His weathered face and graying beard made him look like a professor, which he had been before joining the Pathfinder crew. "How long has the signal been transmitting?" Emma checked her readings. "Based on the degradation patterns, at least 2 years. Maybe longer. Captain, whoever is sending this has been calling for help for a very long time." Sarah felt a familiar tightness in her chest. In her years of service, she had learned to recognize the sound of desperation, even when it came from an alien throat. "What do we know about the source?" Chief Engineer Tom Mitchell spoke up from his station. Tom was a big man with calloused hands and an easy smile, the kind of person who could fix anything with enough time and spare parts. "Signals coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 4 light-years from our current position. Long-range sensors show multiple planets, but the signal is definitely coming from the third world." "Any record of previous contact?" Sarah asked. Marcus shook his head. "The system was surveyed by automated probes 50 years ago, marked as biologically active but pre-spaceflight and filed away. No follow-up missions were ever approved." Sarah stared at the starfield on the screen. 50 years ago, humanity had just begun to explore beyond their home system. Now they were members of the Galactic Council, junior partners in a vast community of spacefaring races. But membership came with rules, and one of the most important rules was not to interfere with developing civilizations. "Emma, can you determine if this species has achieved spaceflight?" Sarah asked. The lieutenant worked at her console for several minutes, running the alien signal through various analysis programs. "It's hard to tell, Captain. The transmission technology is definitely advanced, but it's completely unlike anything we've seen. It's almost organic in nature." "Organic?" Marcus leaned forward, his scientific curiosity clearly aroused. "What do you mean?" "The signal patterns suggest the transmitter isn't made of metal or ceramics. It might be grown rather than built. Like a living thing that's been engineered to broadcast radio waves." Tom whistled softly. "That's way beyond anything we can do." "Sounds pretty advanced to me." Sarah made her decision. "Set course for the Kepler 442 system. Maximum safe speed." "Captain," Emma said hesitantly, "shouldn't we report this to Earth?" "Command first." "Contact with unknown species requires approval from the Galactic Council." Sarah had been expecting this question. The regulations were clear, but she had learned not to trust bureaucracy when lives were at stake. "We'll send a report, but we're not waiting for approval. If someone has been calling for help for 2 years, they might not have much time left." The journey to Kepler 442 took 3 days. During that time, Emma worked tirelessly to decode more of the alien signal. What she discovered painted a picture of a civilization in crisis. The beings called themselves the Vorthik, and they were dying. When the Pathfinder dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system, The crew got their first look at the alien homeworld. The planet was beautiful, covered in vast forests and clean oceans, but something was wrong. Large areas of the continents showed signs of recent devastation, as if something had swept across the surface, leaving behind dead zones. "Captain," Tom said from his engineering station, "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the planet's surface. Whatever's happening down there, it's using up enormous amounts of power." Emma suddenly looked up from her console, her face pale. "Captain, I've translated more of the message. The Vorthik are facing extinction. Something they call the Gray Death is consuming their world." Before Sarah could respond, her communications console chimed with an incoming message from Earth. Admiral Harrison's stern face appeared on the screen, his expression clearly showing his displeasure. "Captain Shun, you are ordered to report unknown contacts before making any approach. You're in violation of first contact protocols. Admiral, we received a distress signal. People are dying down there. That's not your decision to make. The Galactic Council has been notified. The Nexarian Trade Federation is sending a survey team to evaluate the situation." Sarah felt her temper rising. The Nexarians were known throughout the galaxy for their cold, calculating approach to everything. If they were coming to evaluate the situation, the Vorthik were probably doomed. "How long until the Nexarians arrive?" 6 weeks. "You're 2. Monitor the situation, but make no contact until they arrive." 6 weeks? Admiral, these people might not have 6 weeks. "Those are your orders, Captain." Harrison out. The screen went dark, leaving Sarah staring at her own reflection. Around her, the bridge crew waited silently. She could feel their eyes on her, waiting to see what she would do. "Emma, open a channel to the planet. All frequencies." "Captain," Emma said quietly, "that's direct disobedience of orders." Sarah looked around at her crew. These were good people, people she had served with for years. They deserved to know what they were getting into. "I won't order anyone to violate regulations. Anyone who wants to be transferred to another ship when we get back can request it. No questions asked. But I'm not going to sit here and watch an entire species die while bureaucrats debate whether they're worth saving." Nobody moved. After a moment, Emma smiled and began working at her console. "Channel open, Captain." Sarah took a deep breath. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Pathfinder. We received your distress signal, and we're here to help." The response came quickly, in the strange musical language of the Vorthik. Emma's translation appeared on the screen a moment later. "Surface beings who travel between stars. We are the Vorthik of Kethmer. Our Queen Zix-Ara greets you. Please, if you have power to help, we are in great need. The Gray Death spreads faster, and we can fight it. Soon, all will be consumed." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Ask them if we can send down a shuttle. We want to see what we're dealing with." The alien response was immediate. "You would come to our world? Even though the Gray Death might spread to you? You are very brave, Captain Sarah Chun." 2 hours later, Sarah stood in the shuttle bay, suited up and ready to descend to the alien world. Marcus was with her, carrying a full array of scientific equipment. Tom had insisted on coming along to study the aliens' technology, and Emma was there to handle communications. As their shuttle descended through the atmosphere of Kethmer, Sarah got her first real look at the Gray Death. Vast areas of what had once been lush forest were now covered in a silvery substance that seemed to move and flow like liquid metal. The affected areas formed a growing network of dead zones that were slowly connecting across the continents. "My God," Marcus breathed, staring at the destruction below. What could do something like this? Their landing site was a clearing near what appeared to be a city, though it was unlike any city Sarah had ever seen. The buildings seemed to have been grown rather than built, rising from the ground like enormous trees. Their organic curves and natural materials blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. The Vorthek who met them were equally unusual. They stood about 7 feet tall, with chitinous exoskeletons that gleamed like polished bronze. Their faces were distinctly insectoid, with large compound eyes and mandibles, but their movements were graceful, and their voices, when translated, were filled with intelligence and emotion. Queen Zixara was magnificent. Her exoskeleton bore intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change in the light, and her presence commanded immediate respect. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of authority and the pain of a leader watching her people die. "Welcome to Kethmer, friends from the stars," she said through Emma's translator. "I wish we could greet you in better times, but we are grateful for any help you can offer." Sarah looked around at the alien city. Even in crisis, it was beautiful. The Vorthik had achieved something humanity was still struggling with: perfect harmony between technology and nature. "Your Majesty, we need to understand what you're facing. What is the Gray Death?" The Queen's mandibles clicked in what Emma's computer translated as sadness. "It began 3 years ago. Small patches of gray substance appeared in our forests. At first, we thought it was a natural phenomenon, perhaps a new form of fungus. But it grew and spread, consuming everything it touched. Our scientists studied it and discovered the terrible truth." She gestured toward a group of Vorthik scientists who had been waiting nearby. One of them, wearing what appeared to be a living computer grown into his exoskeleton, stepped forward. "The Gray Death is not natural," the scientist said. "It is a weapon. Nanoscale machines designed to consume organic matter and convert it into more of themselves. Someone or something sent this plague to destroy us." Marcus pulled out his tricorder and began scanning the approaching edge of the Gray Death. The readings made his face go pale. "Captain, these things are incredibly sophisticated. They're not just consuming organic matter. They're breaking it down at the molecular level and rebuilding it. This is technology far beyond anything we've seen." Sarah felt a cold dread settling in her stomach. "Do you know who sent it?" Queen Zixara's compound eyes seemed to dim. "We believe it was the Nexarian Trade Federation. 5 years ago, they came to our world and demanded we join their commercial network. They wanted to harvest our biotechnology for their trade empire. When we refused, they said there would be consequences. But why would they destroy you? That doesn't make economic sense." "They do not wish to destroy us," the Queen said bitterly. "They wish to reduce our numbers to the point where we have no choice but to submit. A few million Vorthik working as slaves would be very profitable for them." Sarah felt rage building in her chest. The Nexarians were known for their harsh business practices. But genocide? "Have you contacted the Galactic Council?" "Many times. They say there is no proof the Nexarians are responsible. They classify us as a developing civilization and say we must solve our own problems. The other great powers refuse to get involved in what they call internal affairs." Sarah looked around at the dying alien city, at the brave people who had welcomed humans to their world despite their own desperate situation. The Galactic Council was going to let them die because they didn't have anything valuable to trade. The Nexarians were going to commit genocide because it was profitable, but humanity had a choice. "Your Majesty," Sarah said, "we're going to help you. I don't know how yet, but we're going to find a way to stop this plague." Queen Zixara's compound eyes focused on Sarah with laser intensity. "You would risk war with the Nexarians? For people you barely know?" Sarah thought about all the regulations she was about to break, all the career-ending consequences that would follow. Then she thought about what it meant to be human, to stand up for what was right, even when it was difficult. "Your Majesty, where?" "I come from. We have a saying, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. humanity refuses to do nothing. As Sarah spoke those words, she could see hope beginning to kindle in the alien queen's eyes. For the first time in years, the Vorthik were not alone in their fight for survival. The real work was just beginning. Asterisk, the human solution, the medical. Bay of the UES. Pathfinder had been transformed into something resembling a mad scientist's laboratory. Dr. Marcus Webb stood hunched over a microscope, studying samples of the gray death that Tom Mitchell had somehow managed to collect safely from the planet's surface. Charts covered every available wall space, filled with Marcus's handwriting and diagrams that looked more like abstract art than scientific notation. Captain Sarah Chun watched from the doorway, amazed by the transformation of her normally meticulous ship's doctor. Marcus hadn't slept in 36 hours, surviving on coffee and pure determination. His hair stuck up at odd angles, and his uniform was rumpled, but his eyes burned with the intensity of a man who had found his life's greatest challenge. "Talk to me, Marcus," Sarah said, stepping into the organized chaos. "What are we dealing with?" Marcus looked up from his microscope, his face showing both exhaustion and excitement. "It's brilliant, Sarah. Absolutely brilliant and completely terrifying. These nanites are unlike anything humanity has ever encountered. They're not just machines, they're living machines. Biomechanical entities that can think, adapt, and evolve." Tom Mitchell emerged from behind a wall of equipment, his engineering coveralls stained with various chemicals. "The power source is what really gets me," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "These things draw energy directly from organic matter as they consume it. It's like a perpetual motion machine that gets stronger the more it destroys." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "How long before they consume the entire planet?" "At current rate of spread, maybe 8 months, Marcus said grimly. "But that's if the rate stays constant. I think they're accelerating, learning to be more efficient." Lieutenant Emma Rodriguez entered the medical bay carrying a tablet full of translated Vorthik scientific data. Her usually cheerful demeanor had been replaced by grim determination. "I've been working with the Vorthik scientists to understand their biology. Captain, their entire civilization is based on biological technology. They grow their computers, their buildings, their vehicles. Everything is alive, which makes them perfect targets for the nanites," Marcus added. "These things are specifically designed to attack the Vorthik way of life. It's not just genocide, it's cultural annihilation." Sarah walked over to the view screen showing the planet below. More gray patches had appeared since yesterday, spreading like a cancer across the beautiful alien world. In the distance, she could see the lights of Nexarian ships taking up positions around the system. They had arrived 2 days early, claiming they were there to monitor the situation and provide humanitarian aid. "Any word from the Nexarians?" Tom asked. "Oh, they've been very helpful," Sarah said with bitter sarcasm. "Ambassador Krelthain has graciously offered to evacuate 5% of the Vorthik population to work in Nexarian biotech facilities. The rest will be left to die, naturally." Emma's hands clenched into fists. 5%? That's barely enough to maintain genetic diversity. They're planning to turn the survivors into a captive breeding population. Marcus suddenly straightened up from his microscope, his eyes wide with excitement. "That's it. Emma, you're brilliant." "What are you talking about?" "Genetic diversity. The nanites are designed to target Vorthik biology specifically, but they're too specialized. They can only attack one genetic pattern." Marcus began pacing around the medical bay, his mind clearly racing. "Sarah, I need to ask you something. That's going to sound completely insane. At this point, I'm ready for insane. How do you feel about rewriting human immune system responses to attack alien nanites?" The medical bay fell silent. Sarah stared at Marcus, trying to process what he had just suggested. You want to turn humans into weapons against the Grey Death? Not weapons, vaccines. Marcus pulled up a holographic display showing the structure of the nanites. Look, these things are biological. They reproduce. They have metabolism. They can be killed. But Vorthic immune systems can't recognize them as threats because they're designed to mimic Vorthic biology. Tom scratched his head. So you want to use human immune systems instead? Exactly. Human immune systems are incredibly aggressive. We're basically walking biological warfare labs. We've survived plagues that would wipe out most species. If we can teach human immune cells to recognize and attack the nanites, we can create a biological cure. Sarah felt a spark of hope, but also deep concern. What are the risks? Marcus hesitated. Well, we'd be deliberately infecting human volunteers with an alien bioweapon, then hoping our immune systems can destroy it before it kills us. And then we'd have to figure out how to transfer that immunity to the Vorthic. So, certain death if it doesn't work, Tom said cheerfully. And probably court-martial if it does work. Sounds like a typical Tuesday on the Pathfinder. Before Sarah could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Emma rushed to the nearest console, her face going pale as she read the incoming messages. Captain, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command and the Nexarian. Flagship, Earth is ordering us to withdraw immediately. The Nexarians are demanding we cease all contact with the planet. Sarah felt the familiar weight of command settling on her shoulders. What's our status with the crew? Tom grinned. Doc's crazy plan has spread through the ship faster than gossip in a small town. Half the crew has volunteered to be test subjects. The other half is volunteering to help with the technical aspects. Captain, Emma added, Queen Zixara has sent a message. The Nexarian ships are jamming all communications to the outside galaxy. They're preparing to implement what they call humanitarian evacuation procedures. Sarah looked around at her. Crew, these were good people, people who had signed up to explore the galaxy and advance human knowledge. Now they were being asked to risk their lives for aliens they had known for less than a week, in direct violation of orders from their own government. I want to be clear about something, Sarah said. What we're about to do will end all of our careers. Earth Command will probably charge us with mutiny, violating first contact protocols, and conducting illegal biological experiments. The Nexarians might decide we're a threat and attack us, and Marcus's plan might kill us all anyway. The medical bay was quiet for a moment. Then Tom Mitchell stepped forward. Captain, I joined Starfleet to explore strange new worlds and help people. This is the most important thing I've ever had a chance to do. Emma nodded. My family came to Earth as refugees when I was little. Another species took us in when we had nowhere else to go. How can I not do the same for the Vorthic? Sarah looked at Marcus. Doctor? Marcus was already preparing syringes filled with nanite samples. Someone once said that the practice of medicine is the art of balancing hope and reality. For the first time in years, hope is winning. Sarah made her decision. Emma, send a message to Queen Zixara. Tell her we're going to try something unprecedented. Tom, begin preparations for planetary evacuation if this goes wrong. And Marcus ... Yes, Captain? Start with me? If we're asking the crew to risk their lives, I go first. The next 6 hours were the longest of Sarah's life. Marcus had injected her with a carefully prepared sample of the nanites, along with a cocktail of human immune boosters and experimental treatments. The theory was that her immune system would learn to recognize and destroy the nanites, creating antibodies that could be replicated and shared. The reality was far more unpleasant. Sarah lay in the medical bay, burning with fever as her body fought the alien invaders. Marcus monitored her constantly, watching for signs that the nanites were winning the battle. Tom and Emma took turns sitting beside her bed, ready to implement emergency procedures if things went wrong. "How are you feeling, Captain?" Marcus asked during one of her more lucid moments. "Like I'm being dissolved from the inside," Sarah managed to say. "But I'm still here. That's something, right?" "That's everything," Marcus said with a grin. "Sarah, your immune system is not just fighting the nanites, it's adapting to them, learning their weaknesses. I think this is actually going to work." On the second day, Sarah's fever broke. More importantly, blood tests showed that the nanites in her system were not just dead. They were being actively hunted down and destroyed by her white blood cells. Her immune system had learned to recognize them as enemies and was producing antibodies at an incredible rate. "Marcus," Sarah said, sitting up in bed for the first time in 2 days, "please tell me you figured out how to transfer this to the Vorthik." "That's the beautiful part," Marcus said, barely able to contain his excitement. "We don't have to transfer it. We just need to create a treatment that combines human antibodies with Vorthik biology. Their immune systems will learn the same way yours did." The next challenge was production. Creating enough antibody treatment for millions of Vorthik required resources the Pathfinder didn't have. But Tom Mitchell had been busy with his own project. "Captain, I've been working with the Vorthik engineers," Tom said, standing in front of a holographic display showing the alien planet. "Their biotechnology is incredible. If we can get the antibody formula to them, they can grow production facilities in a matter of days. The problem is the Nexarians," Emma added. "They've blockaded the planet. Nothing gets through without their permission." Sarah studied the tactical display showing the positions of the Nexarian ships. 12 heavy cruisers arranged in a perfect blockade pattern, with the flagship stationed directly above the Vorthik capital city. It was an overwhelming force against her single exploration vessel. "Captain," Tom said quietly, "I've been talking to some of the other engineers. We think we can modify the shuttle bays to launch multiple probes simultaneously. If we can get even one probe through the blockade with the antibody data, the Nexarians will consider that an act of war," Sarah said. "They're already committing genocide," Emma replied. "How much worse can it get?" Sarah looked around the bridge at her crew. In just a few days, they had gone from being explorers to being rebels. They were about to challenge one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, armed with nothing but hope and stubborn human determination. "All right," Sarah said. "Let's show the galaxy what humanity is really about." The battle, when it came, was nothing like the space combat simulations Sarah had trained on. The Nexarian ships were massive, heavily armed, and crewed by beings who had been fighting space battles for thousands of years. The Pathfinder was a single exploration vessel with minimal weapons and a crew of scientists, but humanity had advantages the Nexarians didn't expect. Tom's modified probes were small, fast, and almost impossible to track. While the Nexarian ships focused on the main threat, dozens of probes slipped through their defenses and landed on the planet's surface. Each one carried the precious antibody formula, and instructions for mass production. The space battle itself was brief but intense. The Pathfinder used its superior speed and maneuverability to avoid the worst of the Nexarian weapons, while Emma broadcast the entire engagement to every ship in the system. Within hours, the galaxy would know what the Nexarians had been doing to the Vorthik. On the planet's surface, something miraculous was happening. The Vorthik had received the antibody formula and were already beginning production. Their biotechnology allowed them to grow manufacturing facilities in hours rather than months. Within days, they would have enough treatment to cure their entire population. Ambassador Krell then appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with rage. "Captain Shun, you have interfered with legitimate Nexarian operations. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." Sarah looked at the tactical display, showing the spreading clouds of antibody treatment on the planet below. The Grey Death was already beginning to retreat, unable to survive in the presence of the human-developed cure. "Ambassador," Sarah said with a smile, "I think you'll find that the consequences are yours to face. The galaxy is watching, and they now know exactly what you've been doing here." As if to emphasize her point, new ships began dropping out of hyperspace around the system. Not just human ships, but vessels from dozens of different species. The news of humanity's stand against the Nexarians had spread faster than anyone had expected. Queen Zixara-us voice came through the communication system, her words translated by Emma, but carrying joy that needed no translation. "Captain Chun, the cure is working. The Grey Death is dying. Our world is saved." Sarah felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the readings from the planet. The gray patches were shrinking, being replaced by the natural green of recovered forests. An entire civilization had been saved from extinction. "Captain," Emma said softly, "we're receiving a message from Admiral Harrison. The Galactic Council is demanding a full investigation into Nexarian activities. Several other species are coming forward with their own stories of Nexarian commercial pressure." Sarah leaned back in her command chair, exhausted but satisfied. They had done it. They had saved the Vorthic and exposed the Nexarians' crimes. But more than that, they had shown the galaxy something new: humanity's willingness to stand up for the forgotten and the powerless. "Tom, Emma, Marcus," Sarah said, "I want you to know that what we've done here today will change everything. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again." "Good," Tom said with a grin. "Let them know that humans don't abandon people who need help." 6 months later, Captain Sarah Chun stood in the newly constructed Earth Embassy on Kethmer, watching Vorthic children play in gardens that had once been consumed by the Grey Death. The children were a symbol of hope, proof that life could triumph over even the most sophisticated weapons of extinction. Queen Zixara approached, her ceremonial robes shimmering in the alien sunlight. "Captain Chun, or should I say Ambassador Chun, the Galactic Council's decision to create the Guardian Protocol was inspired by your actions here." Sarah smiled at the title she still wasn't used to. The Guardian Protocol was humanity's new role in the galaxy, protector of species that other powers had abandoned. It was a responsibility she took seriously. "Your Majesty, we only did what anyone should have done." "No, my friend. What you did was uniquely human. You saw beings in need and acted without thought of reward or consequence. The galaxy is learning that humanity judges the worth of a species not by their technology or resources, but by their need for help." Through the embassy windows, Sarah could see human and Vorthic scientists working together on new projects. The alliance between their species had grown into something beautiful, a partnership based on mutual respect and shared values. Emma Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's permanent liaison to the Vorthic, approached with a tablet full of messages. "Sarah, we're receiving requests for help from 17 different species. Word is spreading that humanity will stand up for the forgotten." Sarah looked at the list of desperate civilizations, each one facing extinction, while the galaxy's great powers looked the other way. It was overwhelming, but also inspiring. Humanity had found its place among the stars, not as conquerors or traders, but as protectors. "Emma, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're going to need more ships." As the alien sun set over the recovered world of Kethmer, Sarah reflected on how far they had all come. The galaxy had turned its back on the Vorthic, condemning them to extinction for the crime of being economically unimportant. But humanity had stepped up, risking everything to save people they barely knew. It was, Sarah thought, the most human thing they could have done. And in the vast darkness of space, other voices were calling out for help, knowing now that somewhere, among the stars, humanity was listening and would come. The galaxy would never be the same. Asterisk.